Okay, now we need to have ourselves a conversation about the war on drugs. The war on drugs has failed. It's been an utter failure in every instance in which it has been implemented. Have you got rid of the drugs? It's been going on for generations. Some of the history of the war on drugs. 1914, there was some narcotic tax. 1937, there was a tax on marijuana. So there was the beginnings of fighting against drugs. But it didn't really come into full effect until June of 1971 under Richard Milhous Nixon. And Nixon is the one that pushed mandatory minimums, right? Strike three, you're out. You get, if you're caught 3 times with a joint, then you're in prison for 20 years. No ifs, ands, or buts. No excuses whatsoever. No knock warrants. So people are just going to bust into your house at any point and any time. And that actually conflicts directly with Castle Law. So Castle Law says you have a right to defend yourself inside your own home. No knock warrant. You don't know who's coming in. And so there is that, brief few seconds where you're allowed to defend yourself, until you know that who is coming in your house. And just declaring that you're the police. I mean, anybody could dress up, right, as uniformed officers. Anyways, so the war on drugs. The war on drugs became really strong in 1971 under Richard Milhous Nixon. 71. It's 2015. It's nearly 50 years. And the reason why I'm being very careful with this is because there is a conservative Portugal. The Portugal model is actually a very good model. It's a conservative model, which is for decriminalizing drugs instead of legalizing them. And so when I look at Kentucky, well, let me finish. Okay, so in June 1971, you had Richard Milhous Nixon push the war on drugs. He's the one that declared marijuana to be a Schedule I narcotic. And so therefore, it's a Schedule I narcotic. Really? Is that what you guys are saying? This is what every single person that's in this race is saying, okay? This is, you have 7 candidates, right? Including Drew Curtis, the independent candidate, who's got to get 5,000 signatures by August, but by all intents and purposes, we have 7 candidates. Now, it makes none of them have said anything about decriminalizing or legalizing marijuana. They haven't even touched the issue. So that leads me to believe that they are in favor of the current policy of prohibition. They are 100% in favor of prohibition. And that is how I know that they're a bunch of lying assholes. You're going to sit there and tell me that marijuana is a Schedule I narcotic? Fuck you. You're a bunch of fucking liars. The 4 Republican candidates, the independent candidate, the Democrat candidate, everybody running for governor, except for Jeff Young, is being a bunch of hypocritical, lying pieces of shit about this issue. They are absolutely lying through their teeth. They're not standing up and telling you the truth. And the truth is, marijuana, cannabis, is not a Schedule I narcotic. It's been known to cure cancer, glaucoma. I mean, my God, I could go on and on, but it's not a Schedule I narcotic. You're an absolute liar. You allow alcohol sales, and then you're going to sit there and turn around and be a hypocrite about marijuana when it has less effects than alcohol. It is not heroin. It is not crack. It is not Oxycontin. It's not even alcohol. Marijuana, cannabis is lower than alcohol. So what a hypocritical society. That's the reason it's a gateway drug, because when the people who have been lied to, it's usually the older generations, lie to the young adults and say it's a Schedule I narcotic, and then they find out it's a lie. Well, what else have they been lying about? They lied about this. What else have they been lying about? Well, they've probably been lying about everything else too, right? So it's not a gateway drug. It's, if anything, cigarettes or alcohol would be a gateway drug. And the next thing in the history, January 1977, Jimmy Carter was elected President of the United States to decriminalize marijuana. So that was a plank on his platform to decriminalize marijuana. He was elected. So, I mean, the idea has been around for such a long time. We did have the 60s. We had all the hippies. And then once you've tried all the drugs and then you got back into society, don't you realize you know, that, I mean, cannabis is not like it's not a drug. I wouldn't even say it's a drug if, you know, in terms of thinking about drugs that I would want my kids just to absolutely stay away from versus, you know, like a vice, like sort of, you know, I wouldn't want them to smoke cigarettes either, or eat too much sugar or not get enough exercise, not drink enough water. I want them to be as healthy as possible. And, so, you know, that's, but it's, you know, it'd be their own bodies. And as adults, they would be able to make their own decisions. So that's what we're talking about is the adults. Keep away all drugs away from kids, right? They need to be in a protective bubble. But we have, okay, with Kentucky, with the issue of the war on drugs and this heroin bill. Okay, so in Kentucky, what we got a lot of moonshiners and we have lots of hills. Has been number one cash crop has been marijuana. It's been raised here for a long time. We had Drew Thornton, the Bluegrass Conspiracy. He had all that cocaine strapped on him. And he jumped out of the airplane, splattered all over the concrete. So that was the Lexington Blue Bloods. This is cocaine. This is a real drug, okay? So you had cocaine that was being, you know, flown into Kentucky. We've had a meth epidemic. We had Oxycontin epidemic, and now we got a heroin epidemic. They've made everything illegal. They made salvia illegal in 2011. They went after meth in 2012. And so there's always this manufactured crisis, right? All this crime and all this bad things are happening. With heroin, right now, they're saying that, you know, 1 out of 10 people in Kentucky know somebody that's been injured by heroin, but 27 people have died. 27 people have died. Wow, that's a tragedy. Don't get me wrong. One person dying is a tragedy, but 27 people out of 4.4 million, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Only 27 people died. And a lot of the people that had died actually went through the abstinence-only treatment program that Kentucky has been, you know, forcing down people's throats. That has not been working. It hasn't been working. And so 27 people have died. If you compare that to other deaths just falling in your own house, there's more people who fall in their own house that died last year in Kentucky in 2014 than what had died of heroin. Does that mean we're going to make houses illegal? We're going to make falling down illegal? And if you want to sit there and say, well, the things that are dangerous to people, you know, people can stick a fork in their eye. You're going to make forks illegal? People can fall down a flight of stairs. You know, there's lots of things that can kill people that doesn't, you're going to try to make everything illegal thinking that you're going to get rid of the problem, but all you're doing is just pushing the problem onto something else. So when the big problem was, Oxycontin and the pills, they went after the pills real strong, and then people couldn't get a hold of their pills, so they went on meth or they went on heroin. And so all we're doing is just, you know, now that we're going after heroin, what's going to be the next epidemic that pops up in Kentucky that needs to be attacked? So it'll be the next new drug. What's next? You know, there's some stuff out there, some really bad stuff. I mean, the technology on some of the stuff is getting incredible, but like crocodile is like people are using it and it just melts their skin away. Talk about meth. People get meth faces and they, you know, they get scratches on their face and their teeth start falling out, but that takes after a long time. Crocodile, within just a few uses, you know, people's arms are falling off, and then there's devil's breath out of Colombia. All you need is just a breath, just a little puff, and then if you inhale devil's breath, you are so intoxicated and knocked out, you could be directed to take all your stuff. And people remember going to their safe and going, you know, where they're hiding all their money. And they remember taking all their furniture and helping the robbers steal their own stuff because they were under the influence of devil's breath. And they hate themselves because they can remember everything going on, but they're so suggestible, to suggestion, so, you know, susceptible to suggestion that they robbed themselves. So there's worse drugs out there, worse things. It almost seems like they found out, you know, things about 10 years ago and then they try to jump onto it. I'm sorry. But it's incredible. Right now they just recently had, NyQuil. NyQuil. They just made NyQuil and they made Robitussin illegal. Whatever the active ingredient is in NyQuil, they've made it illegal for minors to purchase, which is good. You don't want it to get in the hands of children, but in order to check to see if you're old enough for NyQuil or Robitussin, you have to show your ID and you got to sign your name. So now you have a ledger. You have a ledger of a list of people who are buying NyQuil. So I guess they want to, if you're underage and you give a fake ID, at least you signed your name. Or I don't know what they're doing. It seems like you're punishing the adults now, and it's for cough syrup. It's for medicine. And so, and then salvia was made illegal. That's a hallucinogen. That's not, that's temporary. It's like LSD. And then there's mescaline. So these are going to be the new drugs that people get on. In fact, even if the Kentucky people was to get on sugar, okay, or caffeine or nicotine or alcohol, they just turn into alcoholics. Right? If that's the new drug, because that's all we're doing. We're attacking the supply side. We're not attacking the demand side. You can't get rid of the drugs, but why do Kentuckians want so much drugs? Why do they have to have their heroin and their meth and their, and their salvia and their Oxycontin? Why do we have pillbillies and moonshiners and marijuana? Why do we have all this? I mean, my God, there's such an insatiable demand. And I think there's a combination of effects or a combination of reasons. Perhaps, I'm just going to float this idea out there, not advocating it, but maybe drugs are good. Maybe people like the effects of the drugs. We have drugstores on every corner. Alcohol is very much accepted, right, in our society as long as it's contained, regulated, off to the side, and you're not, causing violence and mayhem while you're under the influence. You're not drinking and driving, right? So, what is the deal? Why is there such a strong demand? I'll float that one idea out there, but really, if you want to look at the context and what Kentuckians come up out of, you have lots of poverty, you have lots of, lack of opportunities, and, it's also, we have a right to our own bodies. There's people who get on some of these things because they think their lives are miserable, so they just try to escape, have some fun or a good day for one time in their life, and just to feel okay, to feel all right about things. So it's a way to escape from their miserable conditions. So there's lots of things. I think greater education, greater opportunities, raising the level of civics and democratic functions and forms and understandings and solidarity and building culture. There's so many things that we could be doing together that we're not doing. And so, I think fixing sort of the situation that people feel like they're stuck in is what's going to help us move forward. And, the Portugal model, I mentioned the Portugal model, and I'm going to elaborate on that right now. Because the Portugal model, they had the exact same problem that Kentucky was having. They had lots of, every year they would have some new drug and everybody was getting addicted to it, and they would, push more fines and more police state war on drugs. Hal Heiner says we're not doing enough, when it comes to the police. So Hal Heiner is, the war on drugs is coming. Hal Heiner is coming straight for you. And Will T. Scott, they've been very much a part of the war on drugs. Jack Conway's been very much part of the war on drugs. So these guys aren't going to give this up. This is too much money is going into this stuff. But, okay, so Portugal, because we only have about 12 countries that have legalized marijuana or all drugs. Portugal decriminalized all drugs. All drugs in Portugal were decriminalized. And that's what should happen with Kentucky. We should be, treated like the adults that we are and responsible stewards of our citizenship and our freedom. And it should be regulated. Right now they regulate us. If you were to go buy Sudafed or if you were to buy NyQuil, that's regulation, right? You got to sign a ledger. But if we were to go get some Sudafed, because Sudafed is being used to make methamphetamine, now you have to write your name on a list, and you can only buy 1 box of Sudafed per month. And that's all you're limited to. So that really hurts the sales of Sudafed, right? That's not fair for Sudafed or fair for anybody who wants to ail their health, their sickness with Sudafed. But there's a different point that I was going here. Portugal's idea, so everybody else is kind of getting punished. Portugal's idea was to decriminalize everything, and it worked. So, they were having the exact same problems that Kentucky was having. We've had Oxycontin epidemic. We had a meth epidemic. We have a heroin epidemic, and we keep on having these new epidemics, and it's just destroying and ravaging our communities, and we don't know what's happening, but we keep on taking the heroin addict, our neighbor, we take him out of his house, and we beat him, and we throw him in jail, and we call him stupid, and we put a felony charge on him. And then when they get out, they can't find a job because they got a felony charge on them now. And now they got a mark that's on them. And so how are they going to make money? What are they going to go do? Go get a minimum wage job? Or heck, why not try to do the drug market? Now that the heroin is illegal, think of all that extra money. There's going to be dope fiends out here, and they're going to need their heroin. So you're going to need to, you don't have to, but since there's a greater risk, there's a greater reward, you can make more money. So the drug war is only enriching the pockets of the drug dealers, and it's enriching the pockets of the white-collar mafia, of the corrupt government officials. I got pulled over for the library book. He said he would have towed my car. So you got tow people. You got, my God, it's such the prison industrial complex. It's a prison plantation. It all surrounds, that's our system of punishment in this state. And we go directly for the hardest thing. Oh, what? You are addicted to heroin? Well, now we're going to beat you over the head and shove you into a jail cell and give you a bunch of fines and just keep you there for 5 years. Give you welfare, right? Give you complete welfare and pay for your living situation for 5 years. And then that's going to help you. That's going to help the people of Kentucky. That's not going to help anybody. That's going to make, lives worse. It's going to make the people more ostracized. And they're not going to have a downward spiral because of just the drugs, but because the community is treating them like shit. And so they become a pariah, and they become, marginalized and ostracized. They become like, Jesus, the people that Jesus would hang out with. And then that, that adds to their depression and adds to, all the elements that had created the situation to begin with. So Portugal model is a very good model. There's a whole bunch of models that we can use that we can see. I'm more in favor of the Colorado model. And I believe, you'll say, oh my God, legalize everything. What are you saying? Now, I'm not saying flood the streets with everything, but just like alcohol, right? You got to have your ID. You got to, you're limited with how much. You can only get a box of Sudafed. One box of Sudafed is all you can get. So, that's medicine. And then NyQuil is being regulated. You can't even get salvia anymore. It was, declared illegal. The only medical marijuana that we have is CBD, which has no THC and has really very little medicinal qualities in it. And so that's, you can regulate these things. And really, the legalization of marijuana, if you were to take a heroin user and give them a bunch of pot for the rest of their lives, that would be cheaper than incarcerating them. It'd be cheaper than paying for all these prosecutors. It'd be cheaper than, paying for the prisons and the welfare and all the food and clothing and electricity and everything it goes to. You got the lawyers, you got public attorneys, the public pretenders. You got the jurors, the judges. You have an entire industry. You have an entire industry here, a white-collar mafia that is being enriched by the war on drugs. That's why it continues. When they passed the heroin bill, you saw them, it was like 100 to 0 in the House. Everybody unanimously passed it in the House, and then 24 to 4, only 4 people voted against the heroin bill in the Senate. And so this is a bipartisan effort. They're all in favor of this. And the big, sort of liberal things are the two best things that will actually help people. The needle exchanges and the Good Samaritan law. Those things will go to help people. And so it's insane, I think, when I hear about the way that people talk about it, because they're sitting there saying needle exchanges because if you're giving needles out, then that means you're promoting heroin's use. Right? And then the Good Samaritan law, there was actually one asshole. He said that some people might call 911 just to get away with their crimes. Well, Good Samaritan, I called 911. There wasn't an overdose, but heck, I got, I've been dealing, for years, but I called 911, so I'm off the hook, right? No, see, that's like, you sound like you're from another planet because you are from another planet. Those two things are really good things because it shows me that there are legislators in Frankfurt who care. Good Samaritan laws and needle exchanges are very good ideas. They work and they're effective. So that's what's most important. There's hepatitis C, there's AIDS, and needle exchange. Okay, so let's go with needle exchange first. You want to sit there and say you're promoting heroin's use. The way I think about this, it's worse, I think. It's harder of a case, but I think it's kind of similar to condoms in the clinic. Okay, so I remember, being young, hanging out with young men who were having sex all the time, and they would go into the clinic and get a handful of condoms and then go out. It took confidence, it took some bravery to go in there and get it. But I'm glad they did. Instead of having a bunch of unwanted pregnancies, instead, he was covering the soldier up and made sure that there was no STDs or no babies being had or being made. So it was a good thing. It was a good thing. And there's also the person behind the desk. Who are they? Do they recognize you? Do they see you? It could be gossipers. They could say, what's going on? You're telling me that if you're a heroin addict and you heard that the local clinic has a bunch of needles, clean needles, you're going to go into the clinic and just be like, hey, where's my needles at? I don't think so. I don't think you would do that. If you're an outlaw, right? You're this heroin addict. Where do you even get heroin at? I haven't seen any heroin, so somebody once said, "Oh, I'm not going to participate in this recession." I don't see a recession. Well, I don't see a heroin epidemic. I don't see it. Okay, so that's not to say that it doesn't happen and that there aren't people being affected by it. But anyways, that's just my personal observations. So with the needle exchange, if you're an outlaw, you're like a crack addict or something, you're taking, you're involved in this underground trade, and you're all heroined out, right? And you question whether or not one of your needles are good, and so you're like, should I go contact the government in order to get me some clean needles? Should I go? I mean, it's insane. It's actually absolutely insane. If they do get the confidence to go there, I would hope that the person at the clinic would be nice and gracious and caring, and that they would, supply it. They wouldn't be snitching. They wouldn't be trying to find all this information out. But I think it would be the exact opposite, because it's fascists that wrote this bill, and so therefore it's going to be fascists. That's going to be the needle exchange program is also optional. Communities don't want to do it; they don't have to do it. So it just shows that you're a compassionate individual. It shows that you're instead of criminalizing addiction, you actually want to show love and compassion for people so that they can get better. Addiction is a sickness; it's a public health issue. That makes no sense to throw people behind bars for something. It's like you're hurting yourself, so I'm going to beat the crap out of you, ruin your name, put a felony on you, and then, ruin your life in order to help your life and save you. No, that makes no sense. You're ruining my life. That doesn't help me whatsoever. So, and then the Good Samaritan law, the Good Samaritan provision says that if you are in a room and your friend overdoses and you call 911, you will be free from conviction. You will not get convicted of having anything. That's a good idea. That's a really good idea. Actually, I was watching an episode of The Shield, and you want to talk about, people who are very intimately involved in the drug trade. The police. The police are very much, how many people have been busted? They just recently caught the deputy sheriff out of Kentucky for dealing drugs. I think it was out of Kentucky, but there's always, busting some corrupt official for doing some corrupt stuff. So, they peddling drugs. There was a huge article several years ago, so it has happened. I don't know if that recent one was in Kentucky or not, but it has happened. And so, on The Shield, what had happened was that they had some drugs, and then they were using it to get to somebody bigger. I don't know. They were a part of the drug trade. So to think that the people in power can't become corrupt and try to make a little bit of money for themselves, I think is ridiculous. On top of ridiculousness, they're the ones that have all the power. And so really, if you're a mobster, you just pay the cops off a little bit of money or whatever. And then, and then I've heard some police officers will have their informant can sell all the drugs that they want to sell as long as they rat everybody else out. And so therefore they are empowering and enabling, the one person to have the informant. But again, you're an outlaw, you have a heroin addict, they're overdosing. Oh, that's what I was trying to say. There was a heroin overdose on the Shield, and Vic Mackey, he said just drop them off at the hospital and then get out of there. Drop them off, just drop them on the front of the ground and then get out of there. And so that's how he said to deal with an overdosed addict. And so that would be the same choice as any person, if you're with a bunch of heroin addicts and somebody overdoses, you're going to call 911, you're going to call the authorities, you're going to call the police. If you need some needles, you're going to call the government and you're going to get a hold of some government officials so you can get clean needles. It's, if people do use those things, I think it would be tremendous, and the government officials should show their compassion that they're actually using the instruments that the law had allowed for them to do the right thing. To do the right thing. And that's really what you want people to do, is to make the right decisions and to make the right choices. You don't think having somebody overdose, in your living room before your eyes isn't going to be a hell of a wake-up call? But that's, I think it's a little bit far removed from reality to suggest that needle exchanges or Good Samaritan laws will be a way for criminals to get away with their crimes, or for, for them to enable. You're just passing needles out to the community. Is that what you're doing? You're just, here's a bunch of needles, everybody. No, that's not exactly what you're doing. And then the last thing is the grams. It takes, they can try to get you trafficking with 2 grams and it'll be a Class D felony. A nickel is 5 grams. A nickel weighs 5 grams, and so therefore 2/5 of a nickel of heroin, if you have 2/5 of a nickel worth of heroin, then that is enough to put you into prison for 5 to 10 years, and you have, the only possibility of parole is after 50 years. And then they can add some charges. If you had money, if you had a bunch of money, then they'll say that's drug money, right? Clearly it had to have been drug money if there's drugs around. And then there's civil, forfeiture, where they try to take your, your vehicle and your house and everything else that you own. But over 2 grams, they're going to make a Class D felony out of you. Somebody had once said that they didn't want to make a distinction between the high-end traffickers and then the low-level users, because it's the traffickers. If you really want to stop the crime, it's the big boys, it's the high dogs, it's your Drew Thorntons. Where are they getting all this, there's no poppy fields in the ghetto. Where are they getting all this opium? Where are they getting all this heroin at? There's no fields in the ghetto. So it's got to be coming from some bigger supplier, some bigger producer, maybe even somebody in the government, right? Didn't the CIA, Oliver North, cocaine, crack, and that, there's some connections there. So, they're devoid, they're not even part of reality. When they talk about this, they were trying to say, that the 2 grams, that big traffickers always carry less than 2 grams in order to try to duck and get out of the sentence. Okay, I don't know of any, I don't know of any heroin dealers or addicts or anybody that does anything with heroin at all. And so therefore, I have no idea what they go through. I can only suspect. And if they have, they're a dealer. If you're a high-end dealer and you're sitting there, you have, you have to, 2 grams is such a tiny amount. So if you're a high-end dealer and you're only going around selling less than 2 grams just to duck under you're not making any money. How much money can you make with 5 grams of heroin? And you're only carrying 2 grams everywhere you go just to get away from the authorities? Bullshit. That's bullshit. If you have 2 grams and you're a dealer, you're a crappy dealer, you're not making any money, and you should just say that you're using it, because that's not a dealer. I mean, to deal, you got to have like quantities, mass quantities. And you want to sit there and say, well, you don't make any sense. Just look at the alcohol laws. 50 out of 120 counties in Kentucky are dry. And there's laws on the book. So it is illegal to not only drink alcohol, but to traffic alcohol. So if you was to go into a dry county, I don't know of any dry, let's assume Clay County. So you go to Clay County and you have a 24 pack of beer, and therefore you're not drinking all that yourself. That's a lot, right? That's intent to distribute. You could be having a party. You could be selling it to other people. Who knows? You're a high-end trafficker. You're a high-end trafficker. Get out of the car. Give me your car. Give me the keys. Give me the beer. You're going to prison for 5 years. Are you fucking kidding me? You're the asshole. You're the fucking criminal. And that's we need to start treating people like adults, and people have a right to their own bodies. This is America. And it's, if there is a problem, then it needs to be handled with love and compassion. Violence and incarceration is the final option. All peaceful options should be exhausted until we go to the nuclear option of, criminalize them, making them felons, throwing them behind bars, and then just ruining their names. So that's, if you think that's acceptable, that if you have a 24 pack of beer, then your whole life should be ruined and you should be thrown out for felony, then I think you're wrong and I think you're ridiculous. But that's the same thing that you're doing with the heroin, meth and Oxycontin, all this stuff is still here. Jack Conway is talking about, he's bragging about him cutting, the pain clinics. There's half the pain clinics that are in Kentucky than what there used to be. That you're turning, with the whole Sudafed thing, you're turning pharmacists into snitches. I mean, you're violating the confidence between doctor and patient. And what are these doctors wanting to do? We sued Oxycontin, so they give us all this extra money so we can, put it into like some different programs and rehab programs. But really, it's just going into the jail system, and it's going into their treatment system and the jail system, and it's going to the prosecutions. It's going to the white-collar mafia. It's enriching the people. It's enriching only two groups of people. Al Capone is getting richer, and your Joe Kennedys and your, Pablo Escobars are getting richer, and then your police and your prosecutors, public pretenders, tow trucks, jailer rapists, doctors, nurses, administrators, anybody else that's part of this whole criminal injustice system is getting wealthy off of some bullshit, wrecking people's lives. And so I find it, appalling. I find it very ridiculous. It hasn't solved anything, and it won't solve anything. And so this is just a Band-Aid. Passing a bunch of laws doesn't fix problems. It's really personal decisions, right? People are getting stuck and they're doing heroin until they ruin and wreck their lives. Why are they doing that? What's the problem? Why are Kentuckians loving their meth, loving their heroin, loving their Oxycontin too much? Jack Conway's bragging about the pain clinics. The doctors are trying to relieve people's pain. You cut the pain clinics in half. They are trying to relieve people's pain. And that's probably one of the best things that you can give to someone else, to relieve their pain, for them to get rid of their pain. Perhaps there's some criminality that was going on with it, but I don't know. I feel like we are our own, we make our own decisions. And if we want to wreck our own lives, then if we want to drink gasoline, if we want to get on this crocodile which uses gasoline, if we want to drink bleach, if we want to just jump out of a plane or just off ourselves, prostitution, I just think you have a right to do with your own body as you choose. It is your body. It is your life. And especially an adult, a consenting adult. So, in that aspect, I am, libertarian, because I feel like our personal freedoms, this is America. This is America. And we are focused on all the wrong remedies and none of the right ones. Education, better jobs, and just a better conversation, just caring and loving about your neighbor, just giving a damn. I think if people just gave a damn, that would actually probably fix a lot of the problems that we see around here. So that's a little bit about the heroin bill. Yeah, it's a little bit, right? Senate Bill 192, sponsored by Hornbeck, McDaniel, McGarvey, Schroeder, Westerfield. It, free, clean needle exchanges, Good Samaritan law, which are very good things. The act itself is actually called an act relating to contracts for healthcare services for inmates. That's what the act is called. Contracts for healthcare services for inmates. This is all about the prisons. It's a prison plantation. You go to Norway, go to Sweden. They are running out of people to throw in prison. They don't have enough people. They don't have enough crime. But because crime is big business here, crime employs a lot of people. My God, if the Kentucky people stop doing drugs and stop doing crime, the judges, the millionaire judges and the prosecutors and all these lawyers, these filthy, rich, corrupt, plutocrat, sycophantic, white collar mafia wouldn't know what to do with themselves. They would run out of money. They would have nothing to do. They would have to turn on each other. So this heroin bill it's all for the contracts of the healthcare services. That's what it's all about. So somebody in the healthcare industry in the prisons are making a lot of money. The prosecutions are making a lot of money. It increases the prison sentences. So anybody who sells 2 grams of heroin will face a Class D felony. 1 to 5 years in prison, and they'll be required to serve 50%. So 1 to 5, I think I said 10. But 5 years in prison, 5 years in prison for having, 2/5 of a nickel. 2 grams, which would get you 5 years in prison. Could you imagine if they made that in the alcohol? You had 1 beer, well, that's plenty more than 2 grams. You're going to go to prison for 5 years because, this is a draconian police state, and this isn't America, and you don't have a right to do with your own body as you choose. The trafficking, those who have more than 100 grams face a Class B felony. Those who have 2 grams to 100 is a Class C felony, 5 to 10 years. And then trafficking more than 100 grams is 10 to 20 years in jail. I don't know what if there's a way to get Class A felony. 95% of this bill were amendment riders. So you had the opening paragraph, and then you had all these additions. And it changes a whole bunch of laws. It amends 12 KRS statutes. There's 7 new sections of KRS that's been created. And then they even, $10 million, Sandy Overly had an amendment rider, which later on I heard was $24 million. But they was able to find $24 million for the prosecutors. This is the white-collar mafia enrichment law. This has very little to do with heroin and everything to do with the system, the war on drug apparatus, the prison industrial complex, building themselves up and enriching themselves and getting as much money. And, it amends all these laws. No, county attorneys are not reading all the laws and all the language of all these different laws. They are going to just go with their gut. They think they understand it, and they're just going to, since they're the experts and they're the ones that everybody looks to, then their lead will be followed and everybody will just do whatever they say. And so everybody else is going to be confused by all this stuff. It's fascist, draconian. The needle exchanges and the Good Samaritan, I think, will fall by the wayside. And so when they find heroin, they will fuck you up and they will fuck up your life. And they'll say that they're doing it because, it's against the law. The reasons is it's supposed to help you in the community, but they don't give a shit about any of that. So, Senate Bill 192, one of the worst bills ever. They did, they finally shat out, a heroin bill. They was putting a lot of pressure to get it shat out. And they finally got it, it's all shatted out now. Portugal, Netherlands, Uruguay, Oregon, Alaska, Colorado, Washington, D.C., Washington State, North Korea, and Guam have legalized marijuana. North Korea, Kim Jong-un, one of the axis of evils, they're smoking marijuana everywhere. In Kentucky, we have a totalitarian fascist state, and it is more totalitarian fascist. Jack Conway is more totalitarian, in fact, all of them. Drew Curtis, Jack Conway, Will T. Scott, Matt Bevin, Hal Heiner, and James Comer are all more totalitarian fascists than Kim Jong-un. They want to continue the prohibition. Fuck them. They are absolute backwards. They're fucking liars. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They're lying right to your face. That's what politicians do. Big fucking shocker, right? Politicians who's fucking lying. Prohibition goes to line their pockets. It makes the drug dealers make even more money. And once they have more money, they can afford the lawyers and do whatever they need to do. Pay for whatever to, get a slap on the wrist and then keep on doing their thing. It's not going to help anybody. It never has. And so, let's see, 9,000 people in Kentucky died of heart disease. About 10,000 people died of heart disease. That's way more than 27, right? 27 people died of heroin last year. 27. It's a tragedy. but it's 27. Compared to 10,000 of heart disease, let's get some better hearts out here. You know, where are y'all's hearts? That's what we need in order to solve the heroin problem, is people's love and compassion with one another. That's what is necessary. That is what is needed to deal with addiction. You cannot there's some things you cannot criminalize. You can try all you want, but it doesn't help the situation. So if you're being serious, if you actually want to help the situation, so 10,000 people died of heart disease. 2,000 people died of a stroke in 2010. Let's just look at suicides. There was 631 suicides. So there's a suicide epidemic in Kentucky in 2010. And most of them were men. So mostly men are killing themselves. And it's 520 men. And then 111 women. So we have a suicide epidemic. Why don't we work on that? And what do you do in order to help people who are suicidal? You beat them up and you throw them in prison, and then you make sure you rape the shit out of them. Louisville jailers are rapists. They rape people in the Louisville jail. They killed somebody. They stomped his head in. And so that's justice. That's going to help people. That doesn't help anybody whatsoever. You're suicidal, so beat you up, throw you in jail, let you get raped a bunch of times. That's justice. That's justice. And, you know, before I had a beer and I was kind of showing, so look, I'm doing drugs, I'm drinking beer, and you fucked up my life because I decided to have a beer. Fuck you. You're the fucking criminal. And also, you want to talk about criminality? I'll even go take it as another step. Those who want to repeal Obamacare are putting over 500,000 Kentuckians into the death penalty. They're putting them into concentration camps. They're basically gassing them at Auschwitz. They're killing them. They're going to kill 500,000 people just because of their stupid ideological fucking bullshit. Just because they hate a black man being president. Guess what? Kentuckians love their health care. There's lots of success stories. And you're going to sit there and destroy something that helps Kentucky? It's because you're against the working class. That's why you're anti-union. That's why you're, pro-right to scab. You want to right to scrounge, make everybody scrounging. You're against the unions. You're against the middle class. And you're against Obamacare because you're against poor Kentuckians having health insurance. Health care. It should be a human right. And if you're against us having health care, it's because you don't think we deserve life. Health is life. And you're against us having life. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. But you don't even want us to have life. So how are we supposed to get liberty in the pursuit of happiness if you're not even allowing us to have life? So this is all, this is all together. Because it's not love and compassion. Love and compassion says create jobs, care about one another, show love and compassion for one another, and help each other. Be your brother's keeper. It takes a village. But these folks are saying, fuck everybody else. It's all about you. Get yours and then fuck everybody else. And that mentality, it might put a lot of, so-called cowboys out there, but it might also put a bunch of, I don't want to say Indians because that's the opposite of cowboys, but a lot of, bad cowboys. It would put a lot of, cowboys who want to be drug runners too. So, you're going to push the individualistic aspect of it. You're not going to get the conditions that you think you're actually going to go for. So, that's absolute bullshit. I think it's criminal. So, if you want to actually compare and contrast, 27 people overdosed on heroin last year. 26 people in Kentucky have died of the flu. Died of the flu. So, that means, right now, a bunch of Haitians are dying because of cholera, which was brought by the United Nations. But it was eradicated in Haiti for about 100 years. It's been eradicated in our civilization for quite some time, too. There's been, no cholera epidemics. There's been no polio, smallpox, tuberculosis. There's TB shots and people still get pneumonia and people still get the common cold and the flu. But we don't die of it. We don't die of it, not anymore. But apparently there's been 26 Kentuckians that have died. So you want to talk about the heroin epidemic? What about the flu epidemic? What are we going to do about the flu epidemic? What about the cancer epidemic and the flu and the heart disease? That would be Obamacare. That would be health care. That would be actually giving a shit about us Kentucky people instead of wasting our damn money on more jails, on more rapist jailers raping the shit out of people who have an addiction. Instead of wasting our money on all this waste, I mean, on this corruption. My God, why do you just want to waste all this money for nothing? We have people that are sick and dying on our street. That's where the focus should be on. Education, healthcare, jobs. Those are like, it's all about the economics. Help the economics. James Comer sort of has it right. He says have a better business climate, and then we'll have a better society. Not just business climate, but also have a better solidarity and workers climate too. Get them both in here. Get the corporations in here and get the working classes and the unions in here. And then capital and labor is both important. We need them both, and then we need them both strong and robust. Socialism, capitalism, we need a mixture of the two. We have a mixture of the two. Let's keep on doing the mixture of the two. Let's have an honest conversation about this. You're against the socialist salt trucks and the socialist schools and the socialist roads and the socialist fire departments and the socialist EMSs. And if you're not against those socialist things and you're agreeing that some socialist things are good and then others are not. Ultimately, I think we should guarantee people's life. You should have food, water, clothing, shelter. And if you want any more than that, you should go hustle. So we should guarantee people's lives, bare sustenance level. We're a rich enough nation. We can make sure people are living and not dying and starving on the wealthiest country streets, in the world. And at the same time, keep capitalism in place just like we have it right now. So that's actually would be if liberal is to change the system and conservative is to keep it the same. Let's keep our mixed system. That would be a conservative position, to keep the mixed system that we have now. Let's keep the public schools. Let's keep the roads. Let's keep the firefighters. Let's keep the EMS. These are good socialist programs. I don't think of those things as socialist. To me is when we control the means of production. Working class peoples control the means of productions. We're the ones controlling the factories and the things that produce all the things that everybody uses. That's socialism, okay? So we're not even really having, I'm making the conversation more honest, but it's not even as honest as it needs to be. So anyways, that's very frustrating because we should be focused on, elevating people and liberating people, not oppressing them, not hitting a hammer on top of them, not having a Nazi boot being smashed in their face. That's fascism. Having a Nazi fascist boot in the face of humanity. That's George Orwell too. So, that's flu epidemic. Nobody's talking about the flu epidemic. Nobody's talking about the flu epidemic because it doesn't matter, because it is big business. So maybe we will start to hear more about the flu epidemic, but it's way more important. Healthcare, education, transportation, food, water, clothing, shelter, everything I just said, those are way more important than hurting people who get their fix off of heroin. Heroin's a really bad drug. I don't know why they would steep so low.